Do you want to learn the tricks that top leaders use to get the most out of themselves and their teams? Well, Naftali Hoff is here to help. Lead to Succeed. Picks the brains of top leaders to learn about their challenges, insights, and best practices. Here's Naftali.
Hello, Lead to Succeed Nation. It's Naftali Hoff, and welcome to Lead to Succeed, episode 166. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Josh Bloomfield. With 20 plus years of experience and multiple patents in donation technology, Josh is a mission-driven leader whose innovative designs have transformed donor engagement. He began his journey shaped by his father's struggles, inspiring him to lead a life of resilience and generosity. Self-taught in coding, Josh built a successful career in enterprise applications, eventually founding Givecloud in 2010 to empower nonprofits to build digital donor connections. Today, Givecloud supports nonprofits worldwide. Josh is also a proud father, musician, and advisor, dedicated to helping under-resourced entrepreneurs streamline operations and create new revenue streams across industries. Josh, so glad to have you on the show today.
Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. Okay, so I need context, a little more detail. That was a good start with the bio, but why don't you tell us more, your backstory, how you got here, really unpack it for us.
Yeah, sure. Wow. Grew up deeply involved in a faith community in Canada. Part of that was connected to my dad, who struggled with addiction and went to a rehab center, faith-based rehab center. And so that's really where I spent a lot of my time with this community. So grew up steeped in faith, and made a lot of my connections in becoming a musician and even learning some of my trade as a programmer through that sphere. Skipped the post-secondary route and right out of high school jumped into building enterprise applications for US state governments. Really cool opportunity, but wanted something more. Wanted to take all of the skills I had learned building these more enterprise type applications and use cases to help the under-resourced entrepreneurs in my community. And there was no more under-resourced entrepreneur than my parents. They owned a bakery in the city. My grandfather started it when he was 70. My dad took that over
like
in
Colonel
his 30s.
Sanders.
Very similar.
Yeah.
I pitched to my parents, hey, wouldn't it be incredible if I could put Naftali's name in an app with his birthday, and I could design a cake for him. And on his birthday, he would get this gift. It would automatically ship to his house, this edible celebration. And, you could even create corporate subscription models for this so that employees could enjoy the benefits of something like this. And my parents just stared at me and asked, what's an app? And I realized at that moment I needed to find under-resourced entrepreneurs that perhaps saw the value in technology, but didn't know how to deploy it in their business. I got to work on a lot of really cool tech, helping bricks and mortar retailers go online and create online stores that their staff could pick and pack and ship instead of having to re-engineer their supply chain. Built some tools for service management businesses, for a grocery chain to manage their supply chain. And peppered in between all this, I'm making donation tools for my faith community, and they're a nonprofit. And a lot of the organizations they're connected to are nonprofits. And word spreads that there's this energetic, smart dude who can create these donation experiences that help you raise more money. And that's kind of where the idea for Givecloud was born, just kind of naturally out of serving my community. As you mentioned in the bio today, we're helping thousands of nonprofits around the world now create a deeper connection to their donors. In a day and age where things have become more transactional, where we've gotten a little more lonely as people, we're losing connection. There's got to be a way to create a sense of connection when it comes to the good we need to do in the world, the good we need to do in community. And so that's the mission that I'm on at Givecloud. And Yeah, proud dad, been married for 18 years now, and family's super important to me. And raising two young women who can change the world themselves. Yeah, love playing music for fun, and love leadership, which I didn't expect to love. By trade, I'm a programmer. I was a graphic designer. The misunderstood musician in high school who was a bit of a loner at times and didn't really love people. But that's one of my favorite elements of running a business now is the people element. Realizing that businesses are made up of people. They, are legal entities of themselves, but they are made of people. And learning how to encourage people, how to communicate vision, how to create relationship. Man, they all sound like soft skills, but these are the things that actually make a big difference in the world and create the kind of impact that we want to see in the world. So that's more about me.
Okay. There are a few places I think I would like to go within what you
Sure.
just shared. One of them, I literally, before we got on the call together to record this, I got off with a member of my mastermind group, and one of the elements of being in that group is that you get some one-to-one coaching with me as well. And we were talking about, sales being a little bit slow for his liking. He does basically brings remote employees into companies, and so they get offshore individuals in other countries that and whatnot. Anyway, so in the conversation, we talked about helping his salesperson. He'd like to augment his sales team as well, but to help his salesperson by being more present himself online. And I was looking at his company LinkedIn page and then his own LinkedIn profile. And we were talking a little bit, and I said, ultimately, you need to have your page represented online, obviously, but it's you. If you're the face of the company, then you need to be the one who's out there, because ultimately people buy from those that they know, like, and trust. They don't buy from corporations. They buy from the people that they identify with those corporations for the most part. Again, there are
Mhm.
sometimes where I'm going to buy from Walmart, and if I'm buying from Walmart, I don't care who the people are because it doesn't really
Mhm.
matter to me. But especially when it
Mhm.
comes to service-based businesses, like someone who's going to basically be an employer of mine, or someone who's going to come in and help with people management, I need to make sure that that's somebody I know, like, and trust. Even if he's not going to be doing it on a day to day, he's going to be the one overseeing those individuals who are going to be doing that work. So to your
Mhm.
point, I think that the relationship piece is very, very important. And I'm curious to know, what have you found that helps people to what are the do's and the don'ts, so to speak, of relationship building? Like, on the one hand, you don't want to be too much in people's faces. You have to sort of respect their boundaries and all of that. On the other hand, if you're too distant, or if you don't approach it the right way, people might know you, but they won't necessarily feel connected with you. So I'm curious to know,
Mhm.
Josh, how you would approach that.
Man, uh, my mind's going in about 10 different directions on this. There's um, so much I've learned about what it takes to be a good friend. Um, is a lot of what applies in being a great manager, in building great relationships in business. And it's funny, I was talking to my COO this morning, and I was reflecting on how I used language that sounded a little bit like, I can't believe how corporate America has made us treat people. Because I was sharing a story about how one of my teammates at Givecloud recently had someone very close to him pass. And I happened to be within a couple hours drive of him in Canada at the time this happened. And I thought to myself, I'd be remiss if I didn't pop in and see him face to face. Context for your listeners: we are a remote company. We never hang out face to face. And there was a voice inside me wondering, am I crossing boundaries here by just showing up at one of my employees' houses? Um, this isn't an employee lens in this moment. This is a human who's lost someone in their life. And as someone who's lost someone in my life in the last year, um, there's an openness to connection, an openness to relationship, and a unique loneliness you feel when you're processing grief. And the look on this guy's face when he opened the door and he saw me was not a look of, why aren't you respecting my boundaries? It was a look of, I can't believe you care about me this much to show up at my door. And I showed up with, if you got any Canadian listeners, showed up with a box of Tim Hortons donuts and some coffee and gave him a hug. And he invited me in, and we had a great conversation for a half hour. And he's followed up with me since. I can't believe you did that. I can't believe you just showed up at my house. I was talking to my hockey team that night and telling them what you did. And these guys just don't understand what kind of boss you are, that you would do something like that. I think the key is never losing sight of seeing that people are just people. And people will give you clear signs when they are not interested in having a relationship beyond being an employee, or a relationship beyond being just a customer. But I have found that to be so, so rare. So I lean into kind of tactfully executing the things I would execute if I was interested in being someone's friend, tactfully checking in on team members. I had a great interaction with someone last week where I checked in with someone who I just felt I haven't spoken to in a while and wondered how they were doing. And at the end of the call, they said to me, I had just asked the universe for some encouragement. I was feeling down. And this is exactly the call I needed. It is remarkable how little encouragement people need to keep going in life, and how just absolutely no encouragement is typically given.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about a number of things as you're talking, and you mentioned faith before extensively. So I'm going to go there for a moment. I'm Jewish, and in Jewish tradition, we have something called the Shiva, which is when a person loses an immediate relative, whether that's a parent, a child, a spouse. They sit literally in like on a low surface for basically a week. And during that time, people come, usually the first few days less, but as time goes on, more and more. And it's an opportunity for the community to join them in their grief and to provide them a platform to share about their deceased and to talk about those experiences and things like that. And it's not easy to be in that, to basically shut your life down for a week, but the healing element, the ability to sort of, unpack that person's life and what that meant for you and all those kinds of things. Obviously, everybody approaches it differently, but it's built in. And so you actually have a place where you don't even have to wonder, will that person, so to speak, appreciate my presence or not? Because it's like, it's an expectation. It's actually considered a commandment or something we're encouraged to do. So I'm not looking to go too deep into that at the moment because that's not really our focus. But I do think it comes back in my mind in a way to expectations we set, the cultures we create. Sometimes I might think behavior X is over the line, or a certain way of communicating is not necessarily going to be well accepted, etc. But when there's permission given, if you will, when there's a culture created that says that this is who we are, this is how we respond for other people, this is how we show up, this is how we communicate, and of course, done, like you said, tactfully and with respect and all of that, then I feel that empowers people who are unsure about what to do and how to do it to then take action. So bringing it back to that, I'm curious to know your approach to culture building, your approach to sort of giving permission to others that look up to you for guidance. Like, how do you handle that in your day to day?
Yeah, I wish there was a framework I could rhyme off, but the feedback I've constantly been given in my life is that there is an energy and a genuineness and a vulnerability to your leadership that opens people up. And I don't know how to systemize that. I don't know how to tell and share with other leaders on how to operationalize that in their lives, other than to say, I know others who it doesn't come so naturally to, but when you deliver a message that's rooted in hope and love for someone, it is very difficult to misinterpret that message. And to start from a place of cynicism and fear and boundary, as opposed to starting from a place of love and hope, and allowing, boundaries to be a product of love and hope, as opposed to starting with boundaries, you end up with guardrails in your culture that push you towards progress, that push you towards the impact you're looking to have as an organization, but in a way that includes people, in a way that's genuine, in a way that you can't lie through or manufacture along the way. So it's really starting with the heart of something. And so many business leaders, when they're talking about, the key to success and, find something that you love doing, because in order to succeed, you're going to have to spend a lot of time doing it. And if you don't love it, you're probably going to give up. This is one of the hard elements. If you don't genuinely love what you do, it is going to be hard to be genuine with your leaders. Not impossible, but you need to find the love in what you do so that you can carry that genuine love and hope for the mission you have in your organization that somehow impacts people, not businesses, people, right? If you're a B2B type business, figure out how that relationship is impacting others. Even with my own customer service team, it's not, I make sure they understand this is not about necessarily helping someone solve their problem in a live chat. You might be the only encouragement these individuals get to interact with this week. Have grace for them. You don't know what's going on in their life. Be fun, be playful, be encouraging, and obviously be an expert and help them solve their problem at the same time. These are people, not businesses. So that's how I'd answer the question.
Okay. Let's go back to something you said, I think towards the very beginning. It sounded like, I don't know if I'd say introverted per se, but certainly more alone. Socially, it sounded like, and just in terms of your career path initially. And then you talked about coming to love leadership. So I'm curious to know, without necessarily going through all the steps along the way, just maybe give us on a macro level, what was it about leadership that I'm not sure if you didn't love it initially or you just didn't think of yourself as a leader, but how did you begin that transition into really seeing yourself as a leader and, of course, providing that guidance to others and coming to love it along the way?
Yeah. I would say that my previous view of leadership would have been burdensome. It is a burden to lead. It's not just a burden. It's I'm aware that something about my energy, something about how I communicate, naturally people are magnetized to it and drawn to it. And I didn't appreciate that as a youth. And so when I had leaders in my life say, hey man, you are a natural born leader, I didn't want the responsibility of that. I wanted to goof off. I wanted to stick my head out a sunroof and drive a car and go through McDonald's and just, I was a goofball. That's what I thought was important at that time. But that framework, the way I framed leadership as a burden, people were a burden, the way I was treated in school, the way I saw all those things as burdens. And I think the one thing I think that changed the most was, I'm not sure if I'm going to language this well, but it was an internal change that happened. This might sound cliche, but there was an acceptance of myself that happened at some point that allowed myself to actually, again, this might sound a little trite, but like love myself, because I didn't. I didn't love those things that I would have framed as burdensome. I would have framed as responsibilities I didn't opt in for. I don't want to lead these people. So what if they want to follow me? I don't care. Again, a very youthful look at leadership versus, man, there are people who are hungry for direction. There are people who are looking to have purpose unlocked in their life. And what if, and not in a high and mighty way, but what if in the grand puzzle pieces of humanity where everyone plays a part, what if I'm an activator? What if I'm part of someone finding their purpose? I am not the purpose, but I'm part of helping them find purpose. And what if what I see right now as a burden is a gift? And between really allowing myself to see it as a gift and allowing myself to see it as something that can be a multiplier in the world, between that and some of the interactions I was just having with people where I was realizing people aren't burdensome. I can add value to them and they add value to me. And there is a depth of life experience I will not get unless I understand relationship, I understand people, and I don't just dip my feet in it, but double down in it, and teach my daughters to do the same.
So you talked about a gift a moment ago, which I think is a nice segue into what you do professionally. Let's talk about gifting a little bit. Let's talk about donors and donor relationships. I'm
Sure.
sure I'm sure we could have spent the entire episode talking about that element of it because there's so much that's intriguing to me. But I'm curious to know, you shared how you got into this space, but there are obviously gaps in donor engagement. There are issues that anyone who's in the fundraising space struggle with. What would be some of the tips that you would offer to people who are looking to raise more revenue for their organizations, for their institutions, who want to be more than just transactional and really want to do it right? How would you guide them?
Great question. And there's so many different ways of fundraising. And so I'll focus on subject matter that I know is closest to my heart, which is the digital world. And perhaps you're listening here, and your perspective is from the outside of the nonprofit space, and you might think it's obvious that organizations raise money online, that they can accept donations online, and you may even think that's where the majority of their funding comes from, but it's not by a long shot. The majority of nonprofit funding actually happens in completely different channels, grants, major gifts, events, and things of that nature. So our focus is the modernization of the nonprofit. It's that digital experience that perhaps people take for granted. But when I'm advising nonprofits in this space, similar to how my approach to leadership, which is to bring people out of the weeds and focus on the why. My biggest tip to digital fundraisers would be to zoom out of the details, get out of your donation form for a second, get out of the weeds on the goals you've got for this year, end of year. Listen, we're filming this now here in December. It's the biggest time of year for some of your organizations. We've kind of coined a new term around fundraising called trust raising. And it's a framework of thinking that requires you to put connection before conversion, to put experience before data, to really focus on the heart before you focus on the wallet. It's just a framework of thinking as you're building your form, as you're building your campaign. Are you thinking about the individual on the other end as a human to build connection with, to build relationship with, or do you see them purely as a transaction? Another great way to think about it is the money that a donor is going to give to a nonprofit. The money itself is for the nonprofit, but there's actually a reciprocation happening there. The experience of giving is for the donor. And someone who's been in a faith community or is part of a faith community, and myself being from one, this is something that's built into our community, that it is a gift to give. And that language, I'm sure, would resonate with a lot of people. Our grandparents said this to us, our parents said this to us, but there is something deeply ingrained in our DNA, in our spirit, that is connected to the selfless act of giving. And in our digital world, we've just totally lost that. It is purely transactional. There's a handful of organizations that do a pretty good job at this. For example, Charity Water has figured out how to create this one-to-one connection between people and the wells and the clean water being delivered. World Vision modeled this decades ago with child sponsorship. You're not just donating into the ether, you're sponsoring a child. And there's that direct connection. And where I see philanthropy going is, especially for these new generations, is kind of the commoditizing of impact. The same way we would interact with an online brand and ordering merchandise, I think they're going to expect to be able to do good in the world in a similar way, be able to provide nights of safe sleeping, days of meals, square feet of living space. And this is the currency of donation. And then there's obviously the monetary side of it on how to fund it, but the reciprocation in seeing, your order status, the status of those meals being served, and being able to deliver those order statuses in a sense, in a social fidelity that we're all used to in social media, and all to the end of creating a heart connection, a more transparent, genuine connection between the work that has to happen in the world and what it's going to take to execute on that. And there is a unique opportunity that nonprofits have to bring people together to solve problems that only bringing people together can solve.
I wish I had time to go deeper. There's so much in what you just shared, and I'm just sort of thinking about campaigns and relationships I have, both as a former head of school when I was a little bit involved in the fundraising side, and now as a donor myself. But I do need to transition, and I do want to ask you the final question of this segment, which is a question I ask everybody, because all of us, we show up on these podcasts, we sound super good at what we do. People kind of wonder, what were our challenges along the way? What mistakes have we made, if any? But I know that we all do. And I know that in asking that question, it allows us not only to be reflective, but it also allows my listeners to understand that their mistakes are really in many ways opportunities. So my question for you, Josh, is what was the biggest mistake you've made anywhere along your journey that has positioned you for greater success to be the person you are today?
Yeah. Yeah, my life is built on mistakes. And I might even say my life is built on the mistakes of others, whether it's the mistakes my dad made or it's the mistakes that business leaders in the nonprofit space have made in leaving gaps in the market for me to fill in. It's an interesting take on mistakes, but the biggest mistake I made that I'm on the other side of that has impacted my leadership is I made the mistake of getting taking things too personally in business. And I think this might be a natural side effect of caring for people, and being genuine in my leadership is, I'm not sure how well I'm going to language this, but there was just a time where I took people's actions very, very personally, and almost forfeit opportunities because I assumed ill intent. And so, part of my faith background requires forgiveness and requires grace. And it actually took kind of a faith moment for me to realize that people are people, and there was actually no ill intent. And in fact, they were pursuing their highest truth in that. And why did I take that so personally? And why couldn't I have seen it from their perspective sooner? And why couldn't I have been a bridge builder and a mender instead of someone who just thought the world was out to get them? I'm not quite sure what was going through my mind, but learning how to taper my emotions in business is a lesson and a blend of mistakes and failures that I still work through today.
Okay, so we're going to lighten it up a little bit as we get into rapid fire. where the answers are short and sweet. The first thing you do when you start your day.
Journal.
One book that has changed your perspective on leadership.
The Anxious Generation.
What's your go-to stress reliever?
Running.
Your favorite song to play as a musician?
Zach Bryan. I remember everything.
A piece of advice you'd give to your younger self?
It's going to be okay.
One thing that about you that surprises people?
I'm an organ donor.
Interesting. A meal that you could eat every day without getting bored?
Pizza.
Dream destination for a family vacation?
Greece.
Okay. Your personal motto or mantra?
You are an encourager.
And finally, a productivity tip that helps you to get more done.
Disconnection.
Okay, so thank you, Josh. That was incredible. Well done. Before I let you go, tell us a little bit more about where we can find you, where people could find you, could find Givecloud, learn more about your work.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Givecloud.com is our website. I've got an Instagram account that's a little more fun, which is you just look me up, Josh Bloomfield, and my LinkedIn account, which is a little more professional. Again, you can just look me up, at Josh Bloomfield, and I'd love to connect with you. And if you are a listener and you're listening in Florida, I'm looking to make some friends. So I'd really love to reach out.
Okay. A good Floridian friend with a great Canadian accent. Okay, so let's wrap this up, Josh, with one final life lesson.
Be a safe place for others to tell the truth.
Okay, short and very profound. Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure. I can just imagine the excitement of that you bring to your daily work, and the passion you bring, and of course the people that work with you, and all of that. So it's been a pleasure meeting you. And I'm looking forward to sharing this message far and wide, because I think the world needs to hear it.
Naftali, I really appreciate you inviting me. You are a great host. You asked great questions, and I'd love to join you again sometime.
Awesome. You got it. Have a great one.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode and for investing in yourself so that you can lead to succeed. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Your feedback gives the show more social proof and encourages more folks to listen.